Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host, Emily Compagno. Also joining us, Fox Business anchor and co-host of The Bottom Line on Fox Business, Dagan McDowell. Host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy, and Veterans on Duty chairman and former Army intelligence captain, Jeremy Hunt. And it's Friday. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. But we begin with the Veep stakes. Just who will former President Trump pick as his running mate? Everyone's asking. There's a ton of reporting, including this from Axios. You're looking at the short list of potential candidates that's been shifting for months. But the former president says he is close to making a decision. In fact, just yesterday, Trump held meetings with Republican lawmakers from the House and the Senate. And here's what he told Fox's Aisha Hasni shortly after.
A lot of folks surrounding you. Some of them are on the short list for VP.
Yeah.
Was your pick for VP in that room with you?
Probably, yeah.
Do you know who your VP is? Because you told us at a town hall you already knew back in the Iowa caucuses.
I have sort of a pretty good idea. Look, we have some really talented people. I have a pretty good idea, but I think it's probably I'll do it the way it's usually done. You announce it at the convention.
Male, female? Can you give us a hint?
I'll tell you fairly soon.
So who was in the room? Tom Cotton was in the room. We know Marco Rubio was in the room. We know Tim Scott was in the room. We know J.D. Vance was in the room. And let's go through some details on a few of these candidates. And I want to start with Senator Tim Scott. You know, Emily, I want to put this up. We reviewed this a little earlier in the week, and this is Harvard polling out. It's one of the few polls that has ranked VP contenders based on how they would affect the ticket. The only person who adds to the Trump ticket, according to the Harvard poll, is Tim Scott, who adds 6 points. Yesterday, this is from Punchbowl News, Trump heaped praise on Tim Scott during the Senate meeting more than any other VP shortlister, according to Punchbowl. Maybe reading into the tea leaves, but that's interesting.
It's huge, and especially when you take into account outside of the margin of error. Look, everybody loves Tim Scott. I feel like that's the whole point. You can't not find me one person that actually doesn't like that beautiful, gentle, incredibly effective, outstanding, authentic gentleman who has done so much in the Senate and beyond. And perhaps part of the argument that critics wield is that he is very gentle and mellow, seemingly. So if they want to couple President Trump with someone who perhaps has his own contrasting identity, can blaze his own trail, right? Let's just take, for argument's sake, a Vivek, right? He's out there blasting headlines too. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, having the slow, steady dependability, the authenticity, the unwavering faithfulness of a man occupying the Oval Office in any fashion, you know, as vice president or president, is pretty incredible.
Absolutely. You know, Dagan, one of my favorite questions to ask Democrats is, who do you fear? Who don't you want to see on the ticket? I often hear Nikki Haley in response to that question. When I ask Democrats, Doug Schoen has told me that I don't know how many times. But what is interesting is this reporting from Rolling Stones. There was a Cinco de Mayo event at the White House, and there were a lot of Latinos there for Biden. And here was the reporting. They talked about who they feared on the ticket. And we'll pull this up. Matt Walking, a former colleague of mine, tuned me into this. This is Vanity Fair. Why Democrats worry Marco Rubio as Trump Veep could be devil Biden's bid. They said few conversations better reflected the state of downbeat vigilance than those in the Rose Garden, where multiple Latino Democrats expressed fears that Senator Marco Rubio could upend the dynamics of the election if chosen as Donald Trump's vice presidential nominee.
Marco Rubio is definitely in the running. I want to point out not just the list of contenders that we're showing, but two new names who have been floated in just the last week. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, that
Yes.
President Trump and Youngkin had their first face-to-face meeting at the Trump National Golf Club in Northern Virginia just this week. And Youngkin is not among the 8 people that President Trump's team is known to be vetting. And then Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty has also been floated, say, in the last week or so. And if you look at that list and you throw in a Doug Burgum, a J.D. Vance, Burgum being from that critical fossil fuel producing state, they all tell you one thing. This election for President Trump, his agenda is about the economy and it's about inflation. It's about drill, drill, drill. Energy policy is foreign policy. Energy security is national security. Drive down gas prices, drive down inflation. Oh, and you can starve the Iranian-backed terrorists of their funding. So whoever gets picked, I guarantee you, will be the perfect messenger for Trump's economic agenda. That's what he's running on.
And no one's stronger on energy policy, I would argue, than Governor Doug Burgum.
True.
To your point about Governor Glenn Youngkin, President Trump, for the first time by Aisha Hasni, was asked about this yesterday. Listen to what he said.
You also met with Governor Youngkin, a very
Yes,
popular
I did.
governor in the party. Folks are wondering, is he on the VP shortlist? Do you like him for VP?
He's great, and yeah, I think I could consider that. Yes.
Are you considering that?
I haven't been asked that question, but he would be on that list. Yeah, he's very good.
So here's the case, Kennedy, for Glenn Youngkin. Let's bring up the Real Clear Politics average of swing states. You see this here. You see Trump, Pennsylvania up 2.3%, Wisconsin up 0.1%, Michigan 0.3%. So these three states, that's the Rust Belt. And in order for Biden to win, he needs to get those three specific states. However, if you put Virginia into play, let's pull up our Fox News polling, you see a tie here. Donald Trump tied in Virginia. That is a state that no Republican has won in quite some time. George W. Bush did it in 2004. But you put Virginia into play, boy, you put Biden on defense. And Governor Youngkin is enormously popular in that state.
So, yes, and you have to ask yourself, what does this former president expect from his VP nominee? And it's going to be someone, the past experience would be someone who is going to go to funerals. For the last few presidential cycles, it's someone who can do well in the vice presidential debate. I think Glenn Youngkin will actually do better than a lot of these other candidates in the VP debate. But also, I think what makes him attractive and what Trump already knows about his experience with Mike Pence is having a governor, having someone with executive experience is actually an incredibly powerful tool. And that's why I've always thought that Doug Burgum is higher up on the list than most people give him credit for, not only for the fact that he is in an energy state, but his calm demeanor. I think Trump is going to pick someone who has a contrast with him, which also I think moves Rubio down a slot more than people think it does. But introducing Youngkin's name into the list at this point, first of all, it's unsurprising for a president who wants to keep people guessing, wants to keep voters on their toes and engaged in the race, but also checks so many boxes, including delivering a very, very purple and critical state.
I think that's exactly right. And Jeremy, when you look at this, to me, you need two qualities in a VP. Number one, who's going to help you cross the finish line and win. Number two, who can be your heir apparent to govern, 4 years from now, potentially when they run for president. But number one is more important than number two, because you got to cross the finish line. So who checks that box?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. You have to have someone who's going to be able to bring in more of those critical votes, people who might be a little skeptical or on the line. You got to bring in the entire Republican Party, bring in the entire conservative movement, which is, if we're being honest, there's a lot of people with different opinions, kind of different approaches to governance. You got to be able to bring in voters from all walks of life that will be able to step in and support President Trump. And I think the key is going to be someone who can reach across and do that. I like, one person I heard mentioned recently, Secretary Mike Pompeo, as someone who's been a really great job of having kind of building with the kind of the base loves him, and he's also able to kind of reach a lot of the skeptical voters, some folks in the suburbs, for example. Someone who can be able to cross that line and be able to expand and win, because we know that the stakes are way too high. I mean, we know that we have. President Biden has been a disaster on so many different levels. And whoever steps in who's going to be President Trump's running mate has to be someone who's ready on day one, who to make a difference for our country, to be able to get the vote, and also to be able to improve our standing on the world stage, which we know is not looking good right now.
No doubt, a ton of great picks. We will learn who that pick is at the Republican National Convention. I hope there's a silhouette, and then we all get to guess, and then they walk out. All right. And be sure to tune in tonight to Hannity at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm hosting for Sean. We have a great show. Senator Tim Scott will join me. I just found out moments ago. Vivek Ramaswamy as well. Two fantastic names. So join me 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.